We are in the last week of Christ's life, and as we prepare for this and think about discussing it as Sunday school classes, we're looking today at the chapter of Mark, chapter 13 of the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus foretells the future. We'll be looking at verses 32 through 37. And as we do, we'll be talking about the fact that no one knows exactly when Jesus will return except for the Father. So that's given us a really difficult task, which is to learn how to live in the present with an understanding that the future's coming and we don't know exactly when Christ will return, but we need to be ready when Christ does come back. So as we think about that, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to think through with your classes about how you can talk about two different topics. One would be, how do we be a discerning people? A people who is not getting caught up in the frenzy of the world. For instance, I'll use the example in the message of Y2K and how many of us got caught up in that frenzy of getting ready for this event that was going to cause cataclysmic problems in our universe. And contrasting that with perhaps how we could be in terms of thinking about others in a time when it's easy to think of our own personal survival. So discerning in our way we live, and then in a secondary way, thinking then about how we remain faithful. How do we remain faithful when we consider in this parable that Jesus tells of the master of the household leaving, and it says he will return in the evening, at midnight, before dawn, or at daybreak. And I'm going to be sharing how if we look at each of those times of the night, that there were actually points where there was complete failure. Think of Peter at daybreak when he denied Christ, or think of Judas betraying Jesus. These were clearly all examples of where followers of Christ did not remain faithful. And then bringing it really to a point at the end of the message of saying, really to remain faithful and to be discerning people who are ready for Christ's return, we need to be able to live in the Holy Spirit. We need to have that confidence that the Holy Spirit is with us. And that's the good news, that these people who fell apart before the crucifixion of Christ, if we look at them on the day of Pentecost, they were ready to be able to share the good news of Christ's return with confidence because the Holy Spirit had come. So that's in a nutshell what we're going to do. If you'll look at your starter questions, we'll be talking a little bit about what do you do when you're caught off guard, or when was the moment that you were caught off guard. And then really thinking through the scriptures, maybe why did Jesus not tell us when he's returning? And what is the work that God has left us to do? And then giving specific attention at the end is, what does it look like for our church to give strict attention to what the master of the household has given us to do? So what are some of those things that we as a church need to be considering that God has given us to do? And how can we be cautious in an age of misinformation when we can get caught up in those frenzies of being part of something that causes us to be distracted from our purpose on earth? And how do we remain active when it's so easy to become weary in doing good? So those are some of the things to be thinking about as you look to this passage. And so I want to thank you again for leading your classes through this message, and just want to end with one last encouragement. We would love, those of us who are in the pulpit preaching on a Sunday, to hear back from your classes about what you're discussing and things that we should be reminded of, or suggestions, concerns, questions, as you have that discussion as a class. So if you're willing to get back to us by email, phone call, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.